in lockdown, which many of us are in at the moment and some of us have been through for a long time, it's the arts that have got many people through lockdown. It's the things we've watched, the things we've listened to, that have been the things that have got us through. And we all take it for granted that you can sit there and open up ABC iView or binge on whatever streaming service you like. We all take it for granted that we can enjoy ourselves and pass the time during these very difficult times with the arts. But the arts need our support if they're going to be there for us. We need to be there for them. But what we've seen instead from this government, especially during the course of the pandemic, is bringing the arts sector to its knees. And we saw that with the exclusion of so many casual workers from the original round of JobKeeper, which the Greens were the first party to call for, a wage subsidy. We saw them completely decimate a whole group of people simply because they happen to be employed as casual workers. Now, in my area of Melbourne, we are very heavily reliant on people getting together to enjoy themselves as a big part of the economy. We've got a visitor economy, but we've also got an event economy. Now, many of the people who work for the Comedy Festival, for the Arts Festival, for the International Film Festival, were employed on a casual basis. Right? They do it from year to year. And this is the thing I think the government doesn't quite get. Arts isn't just about people who make something that appears on the TV or a piece of music or an artwork. It's all of the people who work around them to make it happen. And when those events had to get cancelled, as many of them are still being cancelled in Melbourne at the moment, a lot of people were out of work. And the government, for a sector that is helping us get through the crisis by providing entertainment and distraction that so many of us need, got next to no support from the government. In fact, so many of those people who were reliant on, who made their whole living based on working in connection with the festivals that up till now had been a regular part of every year and you could plan your year around it, all of a sudden found themselves with nothing. And in many instances, the government wouldn't even give them JobKeeper. And so for many businesses in the arts sector, they found it incredibly difficult to support their staff and to even continue to get by. And we had to push and push and push and push the cause of the arts with this government to get some minimal support for sectors of the arts and creative industry. But what became apparent during the course of the pandemic, because it reveals the cracks that are underlying society anyway, what became apparent during that is that the government, just like they are with education, is actually, I think, quite hostile to a certain sector, certain understanding of a certain sector of the arts, which is why they excluded so many people in education and their creative sectors from JobKeeper and from any kind of support. And it's why, even now, with this bill, they're coming back again with another attack. Because what the government wanted to do is say, oh look, we're going to provide some support to film and television, and we're going to increase the support that's available to television, which we welcome, and that's something that we have been fighting for a very long time, and so we welcome that. But of course, the government can't give with one hand without taking away with the other, and so they announced that they were going to increase the TV offset by harmonising it with the film offset by reducing the film offset from 40% to 30%. So whenever the government says, oh, we're going to do something that is helping a sector, you have to look pretty closely. You didn't even have to look at the fine print for this one to see that in the middle of a pandemic, at a time when the industry was already doing it tough in ways that I've just explained, including in areas like TV and film, the government came and said, we want to cut support for you even further. We fought them off on film and won. But there are other measures in this bill as well, which again betrays the government's hostility towards the arts and the creative sector. The increase of the minimum expenditure threshold for a production to be eligible from $500,000 to $1 million will have a huge impact on the sector in Australia, including in Melbourne and Victoria, where we are fortunate to be housing so many people associated with the sector, not only actors but production, all the way through the chain. Why would you want, at a time when the industry is trying to get back on its feet and employs so many people, why would you want to cut support? Why would you want to cut support to independent films and documentaries that are making sure that we can tell stories about ourselves to ourselves, tell Australian stories to people in this country? This is the level at which it happens. This is the level at which it happens. And it's not as if the government is short of a quid when it comes to handing out money to support certain sectors. Okay? There were tens of billions available for big corporations and billionaires who didn't need it. Like Jerry Harvey was quite happy to be sucking at the public teat and getting JobKeeper from this government, and then went on to make record profits off the back of public support. And every day, you may not know this, or you may know this, Mr Deputy Speaker, but many people wouldn't. If you go and put petrol in your car to fill up, you pay 40-odd cents a litre in tax. But when Gina Rinehart and her big mining companies go and put diesel in their trucks, they pay the tax, and then at the end of every year, the public writes them a great big refund cheque. So the public is paying for their petrol tax twice. They're paying when they go and fill up themselves, and they're paying so that Gina Rinehart can have free, tax-free diesel, cheap diesel. And Clive Palmer and everyone else, all of the other billionaires on their mining sites, they get cheap petrol subsidised by the Australian public. So the government is prepared to give $8 billion a year in the fuel tax credit. Now, there is a good... it's very sensitive for the government. They're interjecting, defending Gina Rinehart, defending Clive Palmer, because they know they are willing to write cheques of billions of dollars a year to support the fossil fuel industry. Very happy to have that diesel fuel rebate going to farmers because they are doing it tough. But why do big mining corporations need to be subsidised by the public to buy cheap fuel? Why do big mine... At the same time as the government comes in here with a bill that says we are going to cut funding from the creative and film sector, at the same time as they come in here and say we're going to do that, they say we can find billions of dollars in the kitty to take from the public to help Gina Rinehart and Clive Palmer buy cheap diesel on their mining trucks. In the time of a climate crisis, where we are looking for ways to make our economy lower emissions, the government says we will spend billions of dollars a year to subsidise the big coal and gas corporations, but we're going to cut money from the creative sector. That is what this government is about. It is all about priorities, and the priorities of this government are to be nothing more than a bunch of corporate shills for the big coal and gas corporations, many of whom make donations to them. And what is even worse is that at the time that the government comes along and says we've got to cut money going to the creative sector, they'll give billions to the coal and gas corporations, and these coal and gas corporations don't even pay tax. The big gas corporations, between them, the biggest ones brought in $55 billion a year the last recorded year in income. Do you know how much tax they paid? Zero. $0 tax. And the government has the gall to then say, oh, not only are we going to make you pay no tax, can we come and give you a handout as well? But I'm sorry, there's not enough money for film and television to give them the kind of support they need. There's not enough money for the arts sector to give them the support they need. There's not enough money for education to give them the support they need. Well, that is because this government does nothing more than do the bidding of the coal and gas corporations, while everyone else can go hang. And I would have thought during a pandemic that the thing to do is to create employment. And you don't create employment by pulling the rug out from under the creative sector. Because a job working in the arts should be treated just as importantly by this government as a job in the mines, but it's not. The government does not treat it as importantly. The government says if you're working in the creative sector or you're working in the education sector, you are fair game. We are coming after you. So this government is all about, they say they're for business, they're only for a certain kind of business. And if you happen to work in the arts and creative sector, then the government is coming after you. And we see this time and time again. They love to get the photo op with the big Hollywood stars, but the one-off support to big productions is not the same as systemic support for the screen industry. And that's what we need. We need systemic support for the screen industry. Australian audiences deserve to see stories on their screen that reflect the diversity of our community. We need a strong local screen industry to tell our stories. The next step to provide that kind of systemic support and protect the local industry must be to legislate local content quotas for streaming services like Netflix, Amazon and Stan. We need to do that. That has to be the next step. Now, the Greens have been fighting for the arts and entertainment workers throughout the pandemic. We are also fighting for an arts insurance scheme to underwrite live events that may need to be cancelled due to COVID. But to conclude, Mr Deputy Speaker, again with this government, they say they're coming along and providing support, and they can't provide support at the same time on one hand without cutting it and taking it with the other. So we'll be seeking in the Senate to amend this legislation so that we can start to provide the kind of support, ongoing and secure, to our creative sectors that they need.
The question is that the amendment be disagreed to, and I call the honourable member for Solomon.